So good morning, everyone. I'm Stacy Turner. Welcome to the DMOpro Zoom this morning on a Monday. Hope you had a great weekend. So many of you are new here today, so that is fun. I know some of you are returning as well, and I love this to be interactive. So I'm going to share a little bit with you guys about a book that I'm reading, and then I would love to talk to you about it. So I don't know if you guys have heard of this book before, and this author, he actually has two books. And what's funny is that my husband had bought me this book, and maybe it was the title. I didn't like it. I never picked it up, and he was saying, "You need to read it. It's really good." I was like, "No, I don't want to." I don't have an issue with giving out advice. I love giving out advice. And then I found out this book that was same author, and I had forgotten it. He had bought me this one a while back, and I had never read it. So this one was really good too, and it talks about asking questions. And so we have talked before on our Zooms about asking great questions. And a lot of times what I find that holds us back in our business is it's one of three areas. So it's either mindset, skill set, or activity. We're just not talking to enough people, right? Or we're not doing the right kind of activity that's going to generate conversations that really make a difference or move us forward. Or we're doing activity that is busy work, but not really the growing activity that is going to make an impact on our paychecks as well. So the DMO planner really focuses on all three of those, and it's a tracking system for the conversations that you're having. Okay, so if you like to plan ahead, you can plan Sunday night or Monday morning and think through where you're going to be this week, who are you going to see, who are you going to be around, be prepared to have samples and information to be able to give them. Or you can be a little bit more reactionary with it as you go through the week, writing down the names of the people that you do talk to. So it can be either way, but it's tracking system. We don't want to just be giving out information, having conversations, and it's always in the follow-up, right? That the fortune is there. We have to be willing to do that. And oftentimes that's what gets missed for me. I can talk, I'll talk, and then I forget that I mentioned it. I forget what I gave them or whatever it is. And so I don't circle back enough times to move them to the place that they're really ready to place an order. And that's a whole different skill set to move someone from a prospect to a customer. Right. But in the back of your planner, you have tracking sheets to write down those names of the people you're having conversations with. That becomes your invite list for an event, because you can go right back to that and you can see, okay, who was it that I had a conversation with? It's in one place and it's not on a bunch of sticky notes and napkins in the bottom of your purse. Anyone else guilty of that? So that's the whole planning of that, the whole point of it. So I want to talk to you guys about this book today. I picked it up yesterday, just was reading a little bit more of it. And books are really good for obviously mindset, right? If you have a growth mindset, you want to learn, you want to gather information, you're not doing it the best it could be done, because there's always a place to learn. There's always space for that. And we should keep that in our minds as well. So having a growth mindset is so important. And books are one of the best way. I always think, like, why figure it out myself? If somebody's like figured out the solution enough to the point where they can write a book about it, don't I want their advice? I would rather not learn the lesson myself and then have to write a book on it. I mean, to write a book, like, I'm amazed that somebody's able to do that, because it's one thing to have a concept and then to break it down to write, that many words on it. Sometimes I'm like, can you just give me about a 10-page synopsis of this? Just tell me what to do in 10 pages. But, there's a lot of time and effort into a book. So I love learning from somebody else personally. That's one of my favorites. So let's just kind of keep that in mind, making sure that we are reading every day. You don't have to read the whole book. That's sort of a hard thing for me. If I start a book, I want to end the book, and it's hard for me not to finish it. Sometimes books just don't resonate with me at one time. You can always pick it up later, and maybe you connect more with that information there. So this author is Michael Bungay Stanier. I don't know. I'll have to type it in there. You guys can see that one. That's kind of an interesting name. So that's what this book is. So he talks about the advice trap. So I don't know about you guys, but I do have, slip very easily into an advice trap. And an advice trap is when you jump to a conclusion and you start, finding the answer for somebody before you're helping them find the answer for themselves. Okay. So let's just talk about where this could, come into our lives. It could be marriage, if your spouse starts talking to you and telling you something that's going in their life and they immediately jump to giving you advice. Guys are really good about that. They want to fix the problem. They see that their wife is unhappy. Then let me tell you the solution. Let's do that. And then let's move on. I am more that way. So than my husband, he's quieter. He's very good at listening. He doesn't give a lot of advice. He asks good questions. I'm the one that jumps to, okay, let's do this then. Here's the solution. What happens is he feels dismissed because I'm not really hearing him. And then he sort of shuts down because what's the point? She's going to be talking over me anyway, right? So he withdraws and then we're not communicating well. So we've been married 24 years. That's something that we have learned. And I have to stay quiet. Like that's the harder thing for me. And he has to open up. He has to be able to talk. So if I jump right into giving advice, it's not a great connecting point. Same thing with your teenagers, right? If they come to me, and I have to really be careful on that one. So I will ask, do you want me to listen only, or do you want some advice? And sometimes she'll say, I just want you to listen. And then other times I realize, oh no, I gave all the advice. I didn't listen long enough. I'll step back and say, okay, I'm sorry. You didn't ask for that advice. You talk, I'll listen. And this works with business prospects. It works with team members in like a coaching call, a 3-way connection with a prospect and one of your team members, in a conversation at a coffee shop with one of your friends. It's really about staying curious. Okay, so your advice monster, there's kind of 3 ways it shows up. So the first one is you must have all of the answers. If you don't tell it, nothing is going to get solved and we'll all fail. Everything's going to fail. So you've got to give the advice. You got to solve the problem. The second one is you must be responsible for it all. If you don't save it and rescue it, everyone and everything will fail. So tell it or save it. There's the second one. The third one is control it. You must stay in control. If you don't control it and manage it well, we'll fail. So one of those 3 mindsets is what we kind of fall back on when we're stuck in an advice trap. There's a lot more to that, right, than what I just gave you on that. At first, I was like, I just don't like that. But as I read it, I was like, I don't like it because it's true. So that's typically what happens, right? Okay, so as you go further in the book, he talks about being curious, and being curious is the essential principle. There's no getting around it. You can't be more coach-like if you're not being curious. So in our business, we are coaches. In some ways, we're a health coach. We're walking through somebody's health journey with them. And then if you're building a business, you are a business coach. Right? So that took a long time for me to even begin to think of myself as that way. But if you think I'm a business coach, or as I build a team, I'm going to be a business coach, then if you have no experience in that, read books, find books about coaching that will help you learn how to be a better coach to your team and to the people around you. So he says, I want you to work really hard at staying curious and managing the process of conversation. Okay, and this is what it means to tame your advice monster. So managing the process of the conversation. So instead of just going in, giving the advice, to be able to step back, slow down, and manage that conversation. So he has 7 questions that he uses. You don't have to use them all in sequence, but they're easy, like open-ended questions that are designed to, they're not designed to generate the answer that we think is the answer they should be giving. Okay, so have you guys ever been, especially in a Sunday school class, I don't know what it is about this, Sunday school teacher or a Bible study teacher will ask you a question and you know what the answer is, like, you know, the answer that they're wanting. And so, you're just like, okay, this is the answer. Like it's designed, the question is designed to give you the answer that leads to their next point in the study. You know what I mean? So we want to be careful. We're not asking questions like that. We want them open-ended to really be curious about whatever situation they're sharing with us. So here are the questions, and I'm going to give you guys this information, or if you're a note taker, you can take it down too. The kickstart question is, what's on your mind? So it's a perfect way to start many conversations, both open and focusing on the same time. Think about if you went to lunch with a friend and your friend said, okay, tell me, what's on your mind? You'd be like, wait, what? Like, we're not talking about the weather or our kids or, something certain. Okay. They're really interested, like, what's on your mind? And you can see in somebody's countenance, they sit down and they're like, oh my goodness, okay. And then, what if you just lean into that and you say, tell me what's on your mind? Oh, I've got this big thing, event this I'm planning at work, and, just let them talk about it, or whatever it is, or your kids, your spouse, your person that you're going to be sharing Juice Plus with, on three-way calls, guys. This is really important because I can get really stuck in that advice trap thinking, okay, they're here to kind of hear my story for me to give them the bigger picture. And that takes time to do. And yet I've lost the chance to really connect with what is it that they're here for? What do they want? And so what's on your mind is a great question. The second one is, and what else? So asking what else, because the best coaching question, he says this is the best one in the world because their first answer is never their only answer, and it's rarely their best answer. So the first answer they give you is going to be kind of surface, and then what else is going to get deeper level to that. Third is the focus question. What's the real challenge here for you? So we're getting them to stop and think and to process. I don't know if you guys have ever heard the saying, people don't like to be told what to do. They like to choose to be a part of something. Have you ever heard that before? So think about that in your conversations with Juice Plus. If you go in and say, you know what, you're just not eating healthy. Look at what you just ordered for lunch here. You think this hamburger and French fries is going to fuel you well? Here's what you need to do. You just need to take these capsules and, give me your credit card. I'll order for it. Sometimes that will work if it's like your best friend or something that you have a really close relationship. But most of the time they're going to be like, who are you? Like, don't tell me what to do. So it's sort of the same thing as like making someone feel like it was their idea. There's a psychology to that, and being curious about what they're dealing with opens that. So the fourth question is the foundational question. Okay, wait, let me go back to the focus question. It was, what's the real challenge here for you? We're all wasting too much time and effort solving the wrong problems because we were seduced into thinking that the first challenge is the real challenge, right? So if their first answer is what you start thinking, okay, I need to solve, but that really wasn't the problem. It was maybe 2 or 3 questions down that was really the underlying problem. And until you start to give advice on that issue, you're just wasting time on these 2 above it. So the fourth one is the foundation question. What do you want? This is where motivated and informed action best begins. So this is the part of them choosing to be a part of something versus us telling them what to do. Number 5, the strategy question. If you're saying yes to this, what must you say no to? Okay, let's think that through in a product conversation with someone. For us, when we started taking Juice Plus, I realized to fit this in our budget, we were going to say no to buying any sodas and bringing them in the home. And if we went out to dinner, we would just get water. So I had to say no to drinks, I guess you could say, so that we could say yes to Juice Plus. So this is how are they going to shift their budget to move the product into their budget so that they can take it for their whole family. What about this question when it comes to team members? If somebody says, okay, I really want to do this, we know that this takes time. If you're going to do well, anything you're going to do well does take your time. So if you're going to say yes to this as a business and sharing it, Is there something else you need to say no to? Maybe that is just a bad habit of sitting in front of the TV, at the end of the day and just kind of decompressing in front of the TV. You can waste a lot of time there. Or maybe it's on your phone, scrolling through Facebook, TikTok. Oh my gosh, I had to take that off my phone. I had it for like 24 hours and I was like, get it off. I'll waste so much time. It was funny and I like the videos, but I realized very quickly I can get sucked into this for way too long. So if we're saying yes to this, what must we say no to? And that's a great question to ask ourselves, right? So not just in a coaching call, a 3-way call with someone, but even asking ourselves. So strategy is about curious choice. And this question makes commitment and opportunity cost, that commitment and opportunity cost absolutely clear. So if you're going to spend time somewhere, what has to give somewhere else? If you're going to spend money somewhere, what has to give somewhere else? The sixth one is the lazy question. How can I help? So the most powerful question to stop us from rescuing the other person, right? So if I'm going to give advice, and when he talks about lazy, he's saying like pull back and slow down, don't move forward so quickly. So that's why he calls it the lazy question. How can I help? Versus here, this is how I can help. This is what I'm going to do to help you. An alternative is, what do you want from me? What can I do? What do you want from me? And then 7, the learning question is, what was most useful or valuable here for you? Think about if you've ever been on a 3-way call with a sponsor above you. What if at the end of that call, they would have said, what was the most useful or valuable for you here? It makes you kind of like think back through, what did you just hear? And what is it that you're going to take from that and apply? And that could be a great question at the end of the conversation about Juice Plus, right? You've had this whole conversation about them, with them about the product, at this point figuring out what it is, and you've shared Juice Plus with them. And then what was the most useful or valuable information here? What if they said, realizing I'm just not eating enough fruits and vegetables, and Juice Plus is a perfect solution to that. It's a way to bridge that gap. I don't know how else I would be able to do that. Right. So they've come to that conclusion on their own. It now seems like it's their idea, and they're going to be much more likely to comply with that because they weren't told what to do. They got to choose to be a part of something. So that learning question, what's most useful or valuable here for you? Or what was most. Learning doesn't happen when you tell something. It happens when you figure it out for themselves. Just what I said there. So I thought those were great questions that we could use. There's a lot more. He talks about putting those questions sort of together in combo questions into 3 different sections. But I would love to hear from you guys. What was the most useful or valuable thing here for you? Just kidding. We won't do that. But I would love to just hear from you guys. Have you ever been on a 3-way call where you really felt heard? And I'm kind of touching more on 3-way calls because I feel like we don't get a lot of training on how to do those, and people are terrified of doing them, right? Like you just say, okay, do this 3-way call. If it's a product call, you have to know, like, more about Juice Plus than the person they're bringing on the phone. If you know anything about Juice Plus, that person probably doesn't, so just be solid in that. And then even in the business, if you're on a 3-way call, your job is to learn from the person that's there. But if they're doing their job well and asking good questions, you're going to learn from yourself, and you're going to discover that for yourself, just like this talked about. So I would love to hear from you guys. Have you ever been on a call or ever done a call that it went well, or that you're like, that was not so good? Any examples? You don't have to give names because your sponsors might be listening to this. No, or your team. I know I have been on both sides of it. Anyone want to jump in?
I can tell you that the first 3-way call that I was on, I was the customer, and I didn't know what the purpose of the call was. And the NMD on the call said, well, what about the Juice Plus business are you interested in? And I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm not interested in the Juice Plus business. And she was like, oh, okay. And it was like awkward. And thank goodness they didn't give up on me, because here I am. But it was a couple of years later, just continuing to love Juice Plus that and getting involved in the community. But it's kind of a bad example, but it's an example of, setting up a three-way is really some of the most important part.
Yeah. So Erin, tell us what you do to set up a three-way call well now. What did you learn from that and how do you apply that?
Well, I make it more about connection and like, oh my gosh, I want you to meet my friend. And asking them like whatever their problem is, mapping that to the person on my team or the leader on my team that can fit, that need. And I share with them a little bit about the person and then say, they're a wealth of information. I can't wait for you guys. And she's going to love you. You're going to love her. And that kind of helps take the awkwardness out of the three-way, because people that aren't in our community don't understand why do we need to get on a three-way. So, but when somebody's sharing with you a problem that they have, and somebody who's gone through that or knows about that, it's a perfect match to do a three-way. And so I try to do three-ways for any reason, because there really is magic and power, and you can learn so much from, even a good friend, you're like, I didn't even know that about you, because they'll start asking questions that maybe you couldn't ask or didn't ask because you're so close or something like that. So that's how I set it up. I just set it up like, you're meeting a good friend or, someone that can help solve a problem that you're having.
So Erin, that's a good point, because in that example, you are there to share your experience as the person being brought onto that three-way call, right? It would be kind of awkward if at that point you started saying, you could ask with, okay, tell me what's on your mind, but that could be rephrased to, and I have said this, I'm excited to chat with you today. I don't want to go over something you've already listened to or watched or answer questions you don't have. So tell me what are some things that have come up as you watched a video? Have you watched a video? Kind of tell me where you're at right now with your information about Juice Plus, right? That's sort of the same thing, but without just coming out and saying, so what's on your mind? Like, there's a time and a place for that specific question, but sometimes you can turn it, you're going to phrase it different for the conversation that you're in. And in a three-way call like that, when you're coming in to validate, or you're bringing somebody else in to validate what you've shared by sharing their story, you're trying to connect the pieces of their life that are similar. And that's going to take, like you're saying, an introduction in the call, but the person doing the call, you can still phrase it that way without just kind of seeming, awkward. But then you could say, okay, what else? So you shared about your child. How about yourself? How are you doing with your health? Okay, I've asked what else without saying what else, right? So that's one way you could do that. So what's the real challenge here for you? You could, asking that, maybe that question alone would be enough, but so you could reiterate. So you mentioned, you're working full time and you've got two little ones. You come home and you're exhausted. Would you say that just not feeling like you have enough time to feed your family well or to cook? Like, is that what your biggest challenge is? Is that what you're sharing with me? So you could reiterate what they've already said. What would be something that would be helpful to you? What do you want as a solution? Again, kind of rephrasing that question. And then it would get to the budget part. So where's a place that you could shift your current budget to be able to add Juice Plus in? And then how can I help you? Is there anything else you need from me today before you would feel confident ordering Juice Plus? Is there something still at the back of your mind you're just unsure of? And then you could say, at the end, thank you for your time with this. What did you find valuable? What stood out to you? I would just love to know, where are you at this point? And that's part of helping wrap up that conversation. So in that time, in that instance where you're taking a product conversation and you're doing a three-way call, that's a third-party validation to that. Something I would encourage you guys, if you're doing a three-way call with your sponsor, that first one was really awkward for Erin because there was no setup ahead of time the NMD coming onto the call assumed this was a person talking to about the business, and so asked her a question about that, and she was like, I don't even know what you're talking about. I wasn't sure. So you can set that up well by doing a Voxer message to your sponsor. Hey, we're going to get on the phone today with Erin. Erin is a friend of mine from here. This is what we've talked about so far. She came to these 2 events. I think she's got questions in this area. I would love for you to share X, Y, and Z. I would absolutely love her to be on my team, but we really haven't gone there yet, but she knows a ton of people, right? So as the sponsor getting on that call, you're going to have more confidence in knowing who this person is, or at least some questions to ask to dig deeper, so that you're serving that person well and not yourself by asking, so when are you going to be joining the business? Like, we'll get to that, right? But it's just, you don't want it to be awkward. And sometimes it's just being patient with yourself. You do a call and you're like, whoo, that was so awkward. That was just odd. Or like, they won't answer questions. And so you're like, okay, moving on to the next question. A Zoom kind of is easier, I feel, because you can see each other and it's just more conversational than just on the phone. But sometimes people don't want to Zoom with someone that they don't know. So getting on the phone with them will work. Sometimes neither one of them will work, and you can do a Facebook Messenger 3-way conversation. So I don't really suggest it on text because I don't know, it's just more annoying to get text messages and you don't like to be in a group text chat. But on Facebook Messenger, you can kind of come back to it. You can have that conversation. So thank you, Erin, for explaining, giving that example. Does anyone else want to share a time you've had a good or not so good experience with a 3-way call?
Can I jump in really quick, Stacy?
Yes, ma'am.
How are you? And it's nice to meet you. I'm sorry we haven't met yet.
No, I'm so glad you're here.
I love this call and I love what you're putting together here. And I bought the books and we're kind of I'm checking it all out to see before we launch it with our team. But I just wanted a couple of the key phrases that really work for me, because I think these little tidbits are helpful for people, is when we're trying to coach new people to get someone on the call, I just have them ask a simple question. So as soon as the customer or prospect has a question, I have them validate them right there. And I tell them, even if you know the answer to that, just say, you know what, that is such a great question. Would you mind if I reach out to my friend and see, I can answer this, but I'd really love to see how she could answer this for you. I think you're going to gain a lot of value from that. And it just elevates, one, it edifies them, but 2, it elevates kind of the conversation. And we work with a lot of support. There's so much to gain here, that kind of thing. So just kind of teeing up the opportunity. And then they feel like they did something good, like they have a badge of, well, I asked a good question, and it encourages them to ask more, right? And I tell them, I want you to be super curious, because the more curious you are, the better it is for all of us, right? So that's one thing. And then the other thing is, as a leader having, conducting calls, it's really one of the things I like. I love what you said at the end, and I always package it in the beginning too. So kind of like pulling that full circle is just the first thing after we kind of make niceties, I just say, well, this call is all about you, right? Like, we have no agenda. There's no expectation coming off of here. I really want to make sure that when you get off this call, you feel like you've gained value and you can have something that, to put to you. So I really want to frame this in the sense that we're meeting your needs. So what's most near and dear to your heart? Is there a question? Is there a challenge? Like, is there a hesitation? Like, what is the thing that's kind of holding you back from moving forward right now? Because let's just dive into that. And usually that kind of diffuses any awkwardness, because we're just kind of opening the air around it, and we're letting them know that it's okay to have challenges or to have, curiosity. And I just use myself as an example that I was really skeptical when I first started, right? So I said, be tough on me, ask me whatever you want. And it's really nice for the person who brought them to the call to be able to sit back and listen to all that actively. And the third thing I just wanted to add here too is, when you're setting up these calls for your leader, the best thing you can do is text them the bullets of the details of the call, because we carry so many of these calls on our calendar that sometimes, even though you've told us verbally or shared that at some point, you can crisscross the wires. And I always like to have accurate data when I'm, speaking directly to somebody. So being able to reference that while you're on the call, just looking at it, is helpful.
Perfect. I love that idea of texting the bullet points to your sponsor ahead of time. So yeah, like just because I listened to that yesterday doesn't mean I'm going to remember that necessarily for that person. So that is very helpful. That's excellent. Thank you so much. That's great. Anyone else? All right. Well, we're at our 30-minute mark. Thank you for everyone that joined in. I love seeing these new people. We have 30 on here, and I love that you guys are finding value in this. I do want to offer, if any of you as leaders have a team that are starting to use this planner for themselves, and you would like for me to get on a Zoom with you just to explain it more to your team, kind of share my thought process and how I came about, but also the workings of it on a daily basis. There is a video that's on the website, thedmoplanner.com, but I really want to make sure that you guys are using it, right? Like, it's one thing to have the planner and it sits on the desk. It's not really going to help you as much as if we actually put it to use, which is true for anything in life. So if you're struggling with that, reach out to me in Voxer, but it is helpful if we can do a group chat on that. If I find there's a lot of people, then maybe we could do a separate Zoom just for that. But I just appreciate you guys being on. Think about that. How do you tame that advice monster within you? I'll share some resources and the notes from today's call, but thank you for being on. I hope you guys have a great week asking really good questions. Stay curious. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Stacy.